Welcome to the channel. This is the first of many videos where I'm going to show you the secrets to woodworking. In particular, I specialise in outdoor, handmade garden furniture. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a picnic set. And it's a lovely picnic set. It's not your normal picnic set. As you can see in these pictures, it's the type where the seats are separate to give a bit more freedom around the garden. Come and join me while I show you everything that's involved in building this awesome piece of kit, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. Now, with any piece of handmade furniture, you're going to need means of cutting the wood. I'm lucky enough to have this awesome piece of kit, this Makita Mitre saw with a 12-inch blade. You don't need anything like this special really, this is laser guided. Do I use the laser? No, I don't. I use my eye. There's nothing better than your eye. To be honest, you could build all of this with a handsaw, and that's how I started many years ago, believe it or not, learning from my old man. Simply with a handsaw and a drill, to be fair. But in this case, we're going to use this beauty. Now, with anything woodwork related really, you want to make yourself a cut list. This way you stay organised. Now, I am going to talk you through the measurements in which I'm choosing and what piece it is I'm building at the time. There isn't plans available at this moment. I would like to include that in future videos, maybe include plans in a link, but at this minute you'll have to just take note of the cuts that I'm making. Now, it's always important to wear your safety gear. Honestly, it really is, especially when using power tools. Splinters can fly off this and go in your eye. You know, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So I use safety glasses, a mask, ear defenders, and I will be using gloves. The reason why I'm using gloves is not because I particularly need them, but what it means is I can be quicker in the cuts that I'm making, and I can slide the piece of wood back and forth across my hand without the risk of splinters. So these are handy. The dust mask I'm using is probably a bit overkill for what I'm doing, but I find it much easier to breathe for long periods of time in a mask like this as opposed to the sort of paper masks. You might find it different, but this is good for me. So let's first concentrate on cutting the pieces for the tabletop. I will say that where you have an offcut at the end of a long piece of wood, it's obviously worth using that piece. In this case, my tabletop is going to be 180 centimetres long. You know, probably is just shy of as tall as I am. You know, nearly 6 foot, I would say 180 centimetres is. So let's start with cutting those. So there we go, that's 7 at 180 centimetres. This will make up our tabletop. Now I would say as you go, you pile things up big to small, especially on a big order like 4 benches, it's much easier to be organised, 100%. The next I'm going to cut is the seat tops. Now the reason why I'm doing the big cuts first is because it gives you a better idea on how much wood you've got left over. It's much easier doing the big ones first and then using the little pieces up than it is having loads of little pieces all lying around. I find it much easier that way anyway. We're going to be cutting the benches at 160 centimetres. That's 20 centimetres shorter than the table itself. I don't think I've mentioned yet, I'm using 4x2s. And you can see here now the length that's left from the tabletop and the benches. So it makes sense to do it this way around. The remainder of the 2.4 metre lengths I've got, this one's 80 centimetres and this one is 60 centimetres. Now that gives just enough for the legs themselves, for the table and the seats as well. So that works really well, that. So all the offcuts get used up. So I would definitely recommend doing it how I've done, big pieces first and then cracking on with the little pieces. So the table legs themselves are 71.2 centimetres and the bench legs are 41.2 centimetres. This gives a total height for the table of 75 centimetres and a height of the seats at 45 centimetres. So I'm going to do 8 at 71.2 and 12 at 41.2 centimetres. So there we go, we've got 12 legs for the chairs and we've got 8 legs for the benches. This will all make a bit more sense as to why I've got so many for each bench, because you'd think that maybe you'd only need 1 per corner, but the way I designed these, a bit stronger I suppose too, but looks much better I think with more legs. Now the 7 table pieces themselves that we've cut, all have to sit on top of something, and we can call that the table support, I suppose. These also help join the legs together as well. So you've got a table support, top and bottom. The bottom one could be called the feet too. Now the top one is 68 centimetres and the bottom is 65 centimetres. I suppose all this will make a bit more sense when I'm putting them together, but you need two 68 centimetres and two 65 centimetres. That's for the table. That's our table support and feet cut. Now these are going to need an angle cut after. What I like to do is get all my pieces cut and then go back doing the angle cuts. I find that when I've got so many cuts to do, it's better to fly them all at 0 degrees and then change this over to 45 degrees after. But what I mean, it's a little bit like this. Get my square. I just take the edge off ever so slightly. About like that. And this just gives a little bit of an edge. I sand it off and make it ever so slightly rounded. But I do this on two corners of each piece, on both the table supports and the table feet. Now the bench supports for a 4-slat bench is 39 centimetres, and then the feet for that is 37 centimetres. And of course we're going to need 2 of each for each bench, so that'll be 4 at 39 and 4 at 37. We'll do that now. I've cut a few more pieces off camera. I didn't think you'd want to be stuck around watching me saw. This is what it looks like for one bench. So we've got our bench tabletop at the back, bench top here. Remember there was 7 at 180 centimetres and 8 for this set at 160 centimetres. Then we've got our table legs here, which are 71.2 centimetres. You need 8 of those. We've got our table support at 68 centimetres. You need 2 of those. We've got our table feet at 65 centimetres. You need 2 of those. We've got our angled pieces underneath the table. These are what support the table with the 90 degree to 45 degree cuts. These are 59.5 centimetres. You need 2 of those. We have 4 47 centimetre pieces. Now these pieces help join the table legs together, which I'll explain after. And then moving on to our bench pieces, we have 12 legs at 41.2, 4 bench supports at 39 centimetres. This is what the bench pieces sit on top of. Then we've got 6 37 centimetres. Now 4 of these are the bench feet. 2 of them actually make up some more support halfway underneath the bench pieces. I'll show you that a little later. So in total there is 6 37 centimetre pieces. We've then got 4 33.5 centimetre pieces. These are our supports. Again, these are the 90 degree angled cuts that give some support to the leg, stop them wobbling. I'll show you more about that after. And then we've got 4 at 26 centimetres. These again help join the legs up, which it'll all make sense. As I'm putting this together, I will tell you which piece they are by the measurement, but at least you know how many pieces are needed and what's measured, and try and keep it that way. So now we've got all our pieces cut, I can move on to doing the angled pieces. Now a lot of people would do this as they go. For me personally, especially when I'm doing a massive order, it makes so much more sense in cutting all the pieces I need to cut and then moving on to the angle. The only angles on this design are 45s. So you can move this over. There we go. This saw goes up to 60 degrees. There's nothing stopping you cutting more angles, which I'll show you more about another time, but at the moment we're on 45 degrees. Now I'm not going to bore you with cutting every single one of these, but I will show you a little bit what it is I'm doing, and then of course afterwards I'll go through and explain which pieces do need to be cut at an angle. So first of all, I'm going to do the bench support and the bench feet, and this is this one where I showed you before, the little marking. I'm going to do this on 2 corners of each of the pieces. So that's our 68 centimetre table supports and our 65 centimetre table feet, both with this sort of shape on. Now this is personal preference, this really. You can't go too far in because the legs will sit and it will interfere, which I'll show you again after. It's hard to picture at this moment. But just a nice little edging off each side, and of course you just sand that nicely after, make it look nice. So the next pieces I'm going to cut are the 59.5 centimetre pieces, and this is more of a big angle you'll see now. and these form the supports then for the table underneath. But again, at 58.5, you'll remember when I mentioned them going forward, I'll show you where these go, but you can see now how these need to be cut. So there we go, that's our two under supports, we'll call them, cut. Now these sit against the legs and the tabletop. It makes sense to you now. And these are just a 45-degree cut right from the edge of the wood, and then the same across the other side. And of course there's two of these at 58.5 centimetres. Now both the tabletop and the bench top themselves have a little bit cut off the edge of two of the pieces, and it's quite similar actually to the tabletop supports like this. So I'm going to take the corner off two of the tabletops, which then of course is the four corners of the actual total table. Same applies to each bench, but of course there's two benches, so there's 4 corners per bench, which means we need to take off 8 corners for the 2 benches. Let's do that now. Okay, so there's our bench top edges cut off, and this is how it would look, apart from obviously we're having 4 slats on the bench, so that will probably sit around about like that. It just takes the edge off, gives it a little nice design on the edge. Of course I'll just sand that ever so slightly. The same applies to the table, I've got those cut too, but like I said, the table's only got 2 pieces that need doing with the 4 corners, so you're literally just taking the edge off the 4 corners, and this is personal preference, you can have it more or less, entirely up to you. So the next pieces I'm going to cut are the bench supports and the bench feet. Now they of course are similar to the table support and table feet, apart from there's more of them. So, let's just double check which ones they are. Those two, we've got our 39s and our 37s. There's 8 pieces there that I'm going to have to take the edges off. I'm not going to bore you with that, I'll show you after the course. So your 39s and your 37s just need the edges taken off slightly. So that's our pieces cut. We've got our bench supports and our bench feet, our 39s and our 37s. Now have the edges taken off nicely. Again, this will all make sense soon. What I will say is, when doing these, because of the size difference between the bench and the table, is just take off ever so slightly less. And you'll see here, you know, you're only talking fractional, but you might just be able to make out on the camera that I've taken a bit more off the table pieces than I have the bench pieces. And the next piece I'm going to cut is our 33.5 centimetre 90-degree bench support pieces, and these are very much similar to these pieces where they go between the leg and the tabletop. However, these sit a bit differently. They sit that way rather than that way, so that means we need to cut from the top, from the narrowest point, which I'll show you now. Again, this will all make sense soon. So we're going to place these on the saw like this rather than like this. So that's all of our pieces cut. We've got our bench pieces here. Been keeping up, we should have all these cut now. Like I say, one day I'll include a cut list and plans, but at the moment, hopefully you're able to take down notes. It's so much easier from this point onwards. Actually, I much enjoy the putting together rather than the cutting. The cutting gets a bit mind-numbing when it's relentlessly the same and the same and the same. But this is it. That's our bench in pieces. So now we've got all our pieces cut, I'm going to move on to making the tabletop first. We've got our 2 68cm table supports, and those sit this way with the angle facing down. This gives it somewhere to fix our table slats to. I'm going to be using 5x70 screws. We've got our 2 outer edge tabletop pieces. You can see here where we've made that cut. These face outwards, and you want the table support to be 15 centimeters in from the edge on each side. And again on this edge, just 5mm, a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix these down first, and then I'm going to fill in the gaps with the other slats. So there we go, 15 centimeters in, 5mm, little lip here, and I'm just going to send the screw through. Now, you should really pre-drill, but what I find is when I'm not close to the edge like that, it's no problem. I can just send a screw through like that. But as a rule of thumb, really we should be pre-drilling, especially if we're close to the edge. I'm going to put another one down on the other side, same again. 15 centimetres from the edge. Now what's important when we do this is that we're checking for square. This is way out, so it's important we bring this back over. And when we've got one screw in, we've got the opportunity to mess with it, which is perfect. And the same here, we need to check if it's square. But until the other screw's in, that's quite loose. So what I'm going to do is the same on the other side, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, that's my first step. The next step is to put the slats in and space them out equally. Let's get that done. So you can use spacers to get these gaps. I find that I can do it good enough by eye. What I do need to do though is use a straight edge. It can be any straight edge, piece of wood or a level, and just hold it against there and make sure all those pieces are touching like so. Now, I'm happy with those gaps really. I can look down and see. I'll mess with the other end in a second, but what I'm going to do with this straight edge while I'm here, I'm just going to put a little dot where each screw is going to go. It's important when you're doing something like this that screws are nice and straight. So I'm going to put our level like this. I'm going to put a little dot where each of the screws are going to go. Careful it doesn't move. Like so. Now I'm only going to put one screw in this side, in each piece, and that's so that I've got a bit of movement on the other end. So there we go, that's one end done for now. We're going to come back on this. I'm going to sort the other end now. I'm going to make sure the gaps are all nice and straight. And then I'm going to put all the screws in that end and come back to this end and put these screws in. So that's the top of our table done. Now I'm going to flip it over and add some support. I am going to add a hole here for a parasol. We'll do that in a second with a hole saw. Typically, I realised I hadn't done these ones. These are 65 centimetres long, same length as the table feet, I believe. And these are going to sit bang in the middle there and offer some support to these slats. We're going to go straight through this with our hole for the parasol, and the hole saw will cut that perfectly fine. So if you've done the measurements the same as me, these are 142 centimetres apart, which means that in the middle is 71. Now I can do this by eye and just see where that sits right. And I would say there. Find in the middle of this, so in the middle of the little mark I put, 71 centimetres. Now I'm going to send some screws here, being aware that I don't want to put screws in the way of this hole. I will be putting screws in, but I don't want them to interfere with the hole that I will be putting through the table. Something to consider. So this edge here is a good example of where you should pre-drill, because you risk splitting your wood if not. So I'm just going to put them on a bit of an angle. I've only used a small bit, that gives the screw a chance to bite. Okay, that's done, that's the tabletop manufactured. We're going to flip this over now and we're going to drill this hole from the top side. And with the table being 180 centimetres, that is 90 centimetres in the middle, so you need to make sure that you're finding half exactly of your table. And I've got a mark exactly halfway on the table. It's worth just checking if that lines up well with the support underneath, and it does. Now not only do we need to put a mark halfway this way, but we also need to make sure we're putting a mark halfway this way. Now these pieces of wood are 9 centimetres, which half of that is 4.5. So I'll put another little line, and there's my mark. I'll drill that now. Now I'm using a 44mm hole saw. This is to give enough space for parasols, and I'm simply using a hand drill. Now I could use a pillar drill, I don't actually have one. As you can see, I'm a bit limited for space, so things like this really make sense to me. Load it up into my drill, stick it on a high speed. Now it's definitely advisable to have some wood underneath, so you don't want it to blow out, so I'm going to get some offcuts. So there we go, we've got our hole drilled. Now I did go from the underside because as soon as that drill bit pokes through even just slightly, it is worth just going from the underside and getting that nice neat cut. So that's looking really good, perfect spot for a parasol. Great, on to the next step. Now I find this a super simple process because you've already got your marks here. We're going to do 4 legs on each side, and as you can see, each leg will just fit onto a slat. So you can miss a slat, leg, leg, gap, leg, leg, and the end. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's get those fitted now. Now for this, you're going to want to get yourself a clamp. Which is my best friend when I'm working on my own. And you can just place it on and clamp it. Like so. Now it's important to check square. So you place your square against there. Some finer adjustments. Clamp it where you want it. Then get our drill. And screw that in. 2 screws for each one all the way along. So our 4 legs on that side done. Now we can put our feet on the top. And this is our 65cm piece. Remember, like this. Check. Yeah, 65. Now this goes on the opposite way to the table support. Again, using our clamp. Set it right. And what matters with these is it's equal on either side. So we'll just check. Roughly 8 centimetres left either side there. See where I was measuring from. And then we'll just clamp it. We'll check measurements. Yeah, looking good. We'll check square. Looking good. Now we can put the same amount of screws in this part. So that's that done. We do still need to fit our knees. We're going to fit those now. There's 2 on each side, so you need to find halfway, and then one can sit beneath half and one can sit above half. In fact, we'll do that now. So 35.6 is my halfway point. So I can mark that there and there before getting my pieces, which are the 47cm pieces. There we go. 1, 2. Now using your clamp, place those on there like that. So like I say, one beneath, one on top. Checking you've got an even gap on either side. Clamp that on. So you can just place the next one on top. Clamps, you hold it, and there you go. We need to fix those in now. So that's those fitted. Now there's one more piece to fit to this, and that is our support, which goes in between and keeps this from rocking. And that is our 58.5cm piece, and that goes there like that. Now it's definitely advisable to pre-drill this, which I'm going to do now. And that just stops that from splitting. And there we go. It's simply just doing that for the other side, and that's that table done. There we go. We've got our table built. Of course, this is going to need sanding. It's a bit rough at the moment. That's okay though. Shouldn't need too much. Little bits like rounding off the edges ever so slightly, just to make it a bit more presentable, needs to be done. But this is it, complete. We're going to flip that over, but not before we've built the 2 benches and we can see it all together up on the patio. Now the process of building the benches is very similar to building the table, apart from we've only got 4 slats. The pieces, however, are very similar. We've got legs, we've got leg supports, we've got bench supports, we've got bench feet, we've got angled pieces to support the bench. It's all very similar. So I'm going to get those pieces together now and show you how to put all those together. We're going to start with our bench supports. I'm going to place them roughly where we think they'll go, and we're going to get some pieces to go on top of that now. So like I say, the process is very similar. We're going to make sure that the support is 15 centimetres in. And there we go. And then 5mm, half a centimetre. A little bit there. Just check the square. I'm going to send the screw through. Of course, the same on this side. Okay, as you've just seen, the process is really easy and very much similar to doing the table. I've put my outside pieces on first with only 1 screw. I've placed the middle pieces where I think they should go, and now I've taken the straight edge on the edge to make sure it's all straight, and I'm going to use the straight edge to mark where the screws go. Like that. Now I'm going to do that on both sides, making sure everything's straight, put all the screws through, and then we'll go on to the next step. That's our bench top made. We're going to flip that over now. Unlike the table, it doesn't need a hole in it, but it does need a support in the middle. Pre-made one of those. And that is one of our 37cm pieces. Now this sits there like that, but it has to be halfway. If you've measured in like me, you will be somewhere around 122 centimetres apart. Half of that, of course, is 61 centimetres. Of course, if any of this maths is wrong, please do correct me in the comments. I'm going to put a little marker 61 centimetres either side. I'm going to place this in between markers, just like the table. I'm going to screw this down and then move on to the next step. There we go, that's down. Next step is the legs. Now, as mentioned before, there is 3 legs per side of each bench, which is a little bit different to the 3 slat bench I would make, which we only have 2. These are extra wide, which I do prefer actually. The first leg we need to find centre, which you can roughly get by eye. We get 3 legs, put one in the middle, like so. It's worth just checking where we're at. So 15 centimetres each side, and that's centre. Clamp that down. There we go. Send the screw in, shut the square. Perfect. Put the screws in. And these, of course, go either side. Let's get that done. Now they're fixed, now we just need to get our bench feet. And those are the 37cm pieces. And of course you just need to find the centre of these 2. Make sure you've got an even gap on either side, which is roughly 4 centimetres. Clamp it down. Like so, get it screwed on. So unlike the table, we've only got 1 support going in here, and these are all 26cm pieces. We call them our leg knee bench knees, which I think is a good name for them to be. A simpler way of doing it is measuring 25.1. On the bottom, and this then is where you sit, underneath the mark. Now the last piece for this, before repeating it on the other side, is the support which goes here. And that is our 33.5 centimetre pieces with an angle like so. Slightly different if you remember than the table supports, because they were that way and these are this way, and they fit nicely there like that. Again, once you've found your place, pre-drill these and then the screw. And that's that side done. Simple as that. We're going to repeat for the other side, and then that's one bench complete. So there we go, that's that one done. Of course I do have to build another one, and then I need to sand it all so it's presentable, get rid of all the splinters. So I'm not going to show you me building the other bench because it's exactly the same. So next will be sanding, and then hang around to the end of the video to see the finished product. So that's it, sanding's complete. You've just watched me sand one of the benches, but the table's the same practically. I will just say that on every square edge, I've just sanded a chamfer in ever so slightly, and that's where you just take the edge off. And what that means is in places where, you know, people may knock their knees, it's just going to be a little less painful when they do. It's inevitable with tables, eventually somebody's going to knock something somewhere, but it's about making an effort to make it a bit more nice. So that's it, the picnic set is complete. I'm made up with this, it looks absolutely fantastic, and I particularly like these widened benches because, like I say, I do usually only make these in threes. But there you go, that's it, looking good and practical too. You know, like I said, these benches all move away, which gives a bit of freedom around the garden because you can use these on their own if you want to, and the same, you can use the table on its own if you want to. This, of course, will need staining or treating. It's up to the customer or yourself what you would do that in. I use Ronseal 10-year protection, fantastic range of colours, and I've had nothing but good words over the years about the quality of it and how long it lasts. But this is it, basically, the finished piece. We've got our hole for our parasol. The customer might or might not want to use that. That's it, done. If you've enjoyed this and feel like you've learned something, keep your eye out for more videos because I'm going to be posting so much more on this channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.